Oh, just so you know, I use a lot of like class language, but that is simply for like what the title of what our thing is. I don't pretend in any way that these are like kink classes or anything like that. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of my language usage. All
Yeah.
right. So 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Brat University, a place where we talk about ethical bratting and kink 101 topics. But like any good university, there are some rules that need to be followed while you are here. This is an 18 plus podcast, so if you are under the age of 18, we ask that you stop listening now and come back when you are of age. Second, any of the knowledge in this podcast is based upon the knowledge, experience, and opinions of those who appear on the podcast. Please make sure that you are doing your own research following the listening of this podcast. And last rule, make sure to have fun and enjoy.
Break a heart like an eggshell, cardiac arrest or heart attack. Throw a tantrum, baby, doll me up cause I'm a brat. I'm a handful, demi devil, pyromaniac. Bitch, I am one, throw a tantrum.
Welcome, everyone, to another class at Brat University, where we try to educate you about all things ethical bratting and Kink 101 topics. As always, I am your professor, Swicked Witch.
And Professor Cage.
And today, we're going to talk about a topic that we had already covered about the difference in the term Brat Tamer versus Brat Handler. Because now we have a perspective that we didn't have before, where we can actually talk to someone that may use these titles. To recap a little bit about my perspective, I personally like the handler title because I feel like when you're trying to tame something, you are trying to change its nature in a way. If I tamed a lion to not eat me, I've changed the nature of that lion to not see me as food. And whereas handler, I feel like handlers very much work within an animal's nature to keep themselves and the animal safe rather than trying to change anything about that animal's nature. So that's my opinion on the terms. What do you think over there, Cage?
Personally, I really hate the term Brat Tamer. I understand that it is a thing that some people are attracted to the idea of, and I'm certainly not here to yuck anybody's yum, but for me personally, Brat Tamer makes me feel icky. I like the term Brat Handler a whole lot better. I've also heard a couple different terms in the same line, such as Brat Wrangler, Brat Coordinator. I like those. Those are real good. Exactly what you were saying. I think the term Brat Tamer carries with it a lot of connotations that I think are negative personally, which is, trying to change a person's personality. Or trying to change a person's core behavior. Because while I think some people have periods of time where they are brats, or where people will engage in bratting, but it's not part of their core personality, I think that especially a lot of the people that I interact with, bratting is just part of who they are, and I would not want to change that. I think that, taming implies that you are trying to change that about a person. And, maybe you have an S-type who is not typically bratty, but they do brat on occasion, and that is something that you don't enjoy. And, after negotiating with them, you decide that is something that you want to change. I think it's different than trying to change someone who is a brat, someone who it's just part of who they are. It's part of how they interact. It's part of how they communicate. And so I think that, like I said, Brat Tamer, the term feels real icky to me. I would not use it to describe myself. I prefer the terms that sort of encompass accepting the bratting behavior as just part of person's, core personality and operating within that, and maybe trying to curb their worse impulses in that regard. Because really, I think that's what it comes down to, is that a lot of times brats just, they want to know where they stand. And bratting is a way to achieve that goal. And I wouldn't want to change that. The brats that I interact with, they derive comfort from, the reactions that they get when they do brat. It feels comforting to them to know that boundaries do exist, that there are consequences for overstepping those boundaries, that kind of thing. I don't want to change the way that my partners are. I love them. I wouldn't want to stop that kind of teasing, playful banter that we have, because that is something that I enjoy. I like exerting my influence and my dominance over someone else. And I feel that bratting is just another form of communication. I see it as being invited to kind of put my partners in their place within our DS relationship. And that is something that feels very affirming to me. Just kind of that confirming that our dynamic is the way that we have negotiated it to be, and that they still enjoy playing in that way, is something that feels very comforting to me.
I will say, and this is just for me, and I don't speak for all brats in any way, I explained to someone that I think part of the reason why I do is checking for, and this is going to sound bad because I don't want to feel, I don't want anyone to feel like I'm testing them, but it's a way to feel secure for me, and that, that the structure is there, the dynamic is still there, that, you're not going to just let me step out of line. It's kind of a way to like poke at it and be like, is this still alive? Is this still on? kind of deal. And like, even though you and I aren't in any sort of relationship like that, with you, it's a bit different and more along the lines of friends like teasing each other. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that in a sexually teasing way. I just mean like, poking fun at each other and doing shit, And I will say it's kind of nice to do it in that way and brat in a way for like bratting's sake because it's fun. Right. And not having the kind of, kind of checking or feeling like it's a way to get attention. Mm-hmm. It's just fun. And so that has been something new for me. So thanks for that. I got to brat in an avenue that I hadn't before, mm-hmm. and helped me explore, the just pure fun that is there. But I also, I went on FET just now, and I mm-hmm. went to their Kinctionary and what they have listed. So they have 3 terms. They do have Tamer, Handler, and Wrangler. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to read what it said. It said, Brat Tamers are one of the more classic or traditional interaction where it is agreed the brat will be tamed into a more submissive version of themselves. The brattiness and modification of it is the means to an end, forming order from chaos. So even in that definition, it is talking about changing them into someone more submissive, which I don't even agree with that wording, because in my head I'm like, well, brats are submissive. I mean, I get what the intent is with the wording, but so that's Brat Tamer. A handler, also known as a brat wrangler, a person who is the dominant or top role in a consensual relationship with a brat. Brat handlers, sometimes also referred to as a handler, see themselves as enhancing or engaging in a brat's natural tendencies. They do not wish to change or mold the brat's behavior, but are more than capable of assertiveness or delivering punishment if the brat gets too out of hand. Brat wrangler's there, but like basically it's the same thing as brat handler, just mm-hmm. a different terminology there. And I think just even reading those definitions, it gives a very clear difference between the two. I remember I was talking to someone during like the vetting process, and I told them I'm a brat, and their response was like, I love breaking a brat, and I'm just like, that is not the energy that I want.
Yeah.
I don't want someone to break my personality. I want someone to engage with it. And I think also a difference I noticed with you compared to other people that I know, called themselves Brat Tamers is they were exactly that. That they wanted to lessen the amount of brat that was there. Whereas that's not your goal. Your goal is sometimes with the way you do things, it is to entice or bring out that behavior, you asshole.
You're welcome.
What did I tell you? I'm gonna need your voice to stay above a certain octave. Okay, we got to keep your voice above a certain octave. You're gonna have our listeners feeling all sorts of things, and we cannot have that. There are no parasocial relationships happening with this podcast. We're not. No.
You're telling me that you don't like it when I talk like this.
I'm so happy none of you can see me right now. Happy you can see me.
I wish you could see them. This is great. This is great.
This is what I get for asking you to do this podcast with me. But also, y'all get a view of a Brat Handler and a brat in action, and it's funny. But like I said earlier, like just between me and Cage, it is playful back and forth banter. I wouldn't say I get punished, but like depending on how far I push, there are consequences for said actions. I remember being at the birthday party, and I'm sitting there like trying to tell you to fight me, and I'm just like, the look on your face, it was fucking great. Just as much as you love our faces, the look on your face when you're trying to be all domly, and I'm just like, but are you gonna fight me though? No, I don't think so. And the look on your face of just like, the fuck you just say?
That's the thing. I don't need to fight you. There are other actions that I can take to put you in your place, to show you where you really stand.
Anywho, back on topic.
Brat Tamer versus Brat Handler. I think that there's a difference between a submissive who wants to be broken, right? Because I can certainly imagine that happening. That is a game that you decide to play, right? I'm going to be bratty at you. I'm going to brat at you, and I want you to break me of that, right? I want to be broken down. I want that type of interaction. I can absolutely see that being something that someone would want, right? But I think that for people who it's more just who they are, I can't imagine you wanting that, right? It's part of who you are. It's part of how you interact. That's part of how you communicate. And I think that anyone trying to break you of that would find themselves in a losing battle, and it wouldn't be a good interaction for either of you. And I think that kind of
the power that exists in me, that it would be a losing battle. Thank you.
Well, it's such a core part of who you are, and I think that to attempt to break that in you would be to attempt to break part of who you are as a person, and that sounds incredibly harmful to me. And while as D-types, we often enjoy hurting our partners, I think it's important to draw a very clear distinction between causing hurt and causing harm. And I think that breaking a core part of who a person is very likely to be harmful. I know there are some people who play with that. Personally, that's not something that that's not a way that I'm interested in playing. I like who I interact with. I like who they are. I like who they are as a person. And I wouldn't want to, change that. That's not the way that I like to play.
I will say I've had people that were like brat tamers of me on accident, where like I just didn't. Not because of anything they said, but like I said, interacting with you has caused me to look at myself and the reason that I brat in the first place, and realizing that part of it for me came from insecurity. You know, I'm looking for that security, that trust, and knowing that that still exists. And bratting was my way to seek attention, was my way to, you know, get what I needed, because I'm not always good at saying that out loud. And so it was, you know, my way of being like, hey, I need this from you, without actually having to say it. But with you, you know, like I said, it's purely for the fun of it. I'm not doing this to get your attention. I'm not doing this so something, okay, I am doing it so something will happen. But, you know, nothing to happen in like a grander scale other than like the immediate moment, because it's fun. More often than not, I just love when you give me that look, because as much as my squirminess entertains you, getting that look from you and knowing that I hit a button, it's just as entertaining for me. Watching, you'll be in the middle of a conversation and I'll say something and you like will stop mid-sentence just to look at me, and I'm just like, hey, push your button hard enough to get you to stop. I was like, what I said bothered you enough to get you to look at me? I'm like, but there was a relationship I was in, and don't get me wrong, it wasn't like I stopped bratting in its entirety, but it definitely lessened because I was secure. I had that. And so it happened a lot less. But I also do think it was also a difference in like the mannerisms, where like, I won't be doing shit and you cause problems, because as has been talked about in previous episodes, I think D types can also be brats, even though they don't want to admit it. And I definitely would put you somewhat underneath that category. You fucking fucking chaos goblin. Well, because you start shit knowing that it'll get us to do something, so then that you can react to it, and you push buttons on purpose. I see you. I know what you're doing.
Notice I'm not denying that fact. Listen, pushing buttons is one of the greatest pleasures in my life. It is something I absolutely love doing. I love just finding that lever and just cranking it down as hard as I can. It is so good. Just watching your reactions to my pushing your buttons is just good.
So I guess that leaves me wondering, because I'm not saying that this, would make anyone any less of a brat, or this is a bad, way to do things, but like why a brat would seek out a brat tamer over a handler. Why, from the brat's perspective, they want that behavior managed. And if you're someone who enjoys that and is listening, feel free to leave a comment, somewhere explaining your perspective, because I honestly would really love to know. But yeah, no, just as someone who that is not something that I want, I would really like to understand the other side of it, because I'm a switch, so from a dominant perspective, I could see why a dom might want to do that if you're trying to reshape them into a different type of submissive. I can understand why being a brat tamer would be, a thing. But I personally haven't talked to any brats where that's something that they want on their end. Mostly because, like you said, it's part of the personality. And anything else.
Well, so that leads me into another point, which I think is important to touch on, which is that, at least in my opinion, bratting is just another type of communication. It's a way to invite or request a certain type of behavior from the person being bratted at, without having to say that explicitly necessarily. It also lets the person that you're bratting at know that the brat wants to be handled. right? You want that type of reaction, that you want to feel comforted by the fact that crossing boundaries does indeed still have consequences. Like I said in my intro, I think bratting involves poking the bear and accepting the consequences. I think a good handler won't go overboard, but will provide an appropriate consequence and appropriate boundaries for the behavior exhibited. You know, if you insult me in a teasing way, you know, I'm not going to walk over and slap your face, right? That would be, you know, going overboard, but I might give you a look. I might come over and, you know, put you back in your place and let you know that that is not acceptable behavior, right? It's really interesting to see how little you can get away with, in the sense that sometimes all you need to do is put a finger on the other person's neck and they understand everything that implies. They understand the the promise of further consequences should they continue their actions. And watching that connection being made in their brain and watching them potentially alter their behavior accordingly is really, really good.
No, I've noticed that in our interactions. So, and I think you have gotten a good idea of me and how far I can go, but usually I don't go that far every time, because one, that's not always what I'm looking for. Sometimes it is just to get you to break whatever you're doing so that you look at me and acknowledge what I just did. And then other times, like, you look at me and I'm just like, is that supposed to do something? Am I supposed to be scared right now? Like,
you and then tend to do that.
Which I've also already talked to you about, like, being a switch. I just feel like it's bratting for me is also in a weird way. Like, I like that power struggle. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. I'm gonna keep doing shit until you tell me what happens if I don't.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
There's also like a really popular I don't think it's popular now, but it was, and it was just like, you know, if you can tell me what to do, you can tell me what to do. But if you can't tell me what to do, you can't tell me what to do. And so depending on my mood, it might be something as small as, you know, I have called you, I think Charlie and I both have at one point, where I forgot what you were doing, but I think you were like helping or doing something for us, and we had called you our little bitch, and that's, you know, what you were. And
that is certainly a thing that you did.
And you know, there are times I'll go that far.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other times
there sure are.
And, you know, there are other times where, like, you know, you'll make this statement about, you know, your dominant prowess, and I'm just like, but is it though? You know, and I didn't actually say anything super insulting, but it was enough to, like, garner a look. Whereas me calling you my little bitch got a lot more than a look. And so I think even with what I do, you kind of understand kind of what I'm looking for as far as a response. And it's that back and forth, I feel like, is the difference between a tamer and a handler.
Yes.
Where I feel like any response, you know, on my end might be met with, like, a punishment rather than, you know, the term that is coined in the brat community, a punishment, to where I'm not really in trouble, but, you know, it's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
It's just exactly. Playing.
Exactly. So personally, I think it takes a certain type of person to be able to interact with a brat in the way that they want to be interacted with. Because ultimately that's what it's about, right? A brat is doing what they do in order to garner a certain reaction. And I think that for a lot of people, that feels very challenging. You know, having your authority challenged is something that a lot of people aren't super comfortable with, or aren't don't know how to handle in any sort of constructive way, I guess. And it takes a certain type of person to want that type of interaction, to want to be challenged, and to respond appropriately, and to not, actually get angry. Be able to banter back and forth without getting upset about the bantering that is being done. Personally, I feel like brats are really rewarding to play with, because once you learn the language of the brat, it will tell you exactly what type of reaction they want, or exactly how they want to be interacted with, or exactly how they need to play in that moment. You just have to learn to listen to what they're actually telling you instead of what their mouth is running on about. Because ultimately, I think bratting is a dance. It's a dance between the S-type and the D-type that I feel gets more rewarding the more comfortable you get with each other, and the better that you get at reading each other's signals. I personally really enjoy that type of reaction, that back and forth, that you're going to poke me and you're going to get a little bit burned in return,
See, now I just want to, next time you are here physically with me, I just want to poke you and see what happens. Talking about poking, and I was like, my fucking bratty brain is going. I was like, I'm just gonna walk up and poke you. Shit. And you're gonna be like, what the fuck? And I'm just like, I'm gonna take what you're saying very literally, because it'll just be entertaining.
And that's part of the brat dance. And there will be consequences for your actions.
To your consequences.
We'll see how big you talk once we're in person again.
I was gonna say all this fucking big talk over.
You talk a big game virtually.
Well, I see you on Thursday. We'll see how that goes. But no, I think now part of me is curious, because you were talking about being able to read a brat. Part of me is curious on what you read or see into me, and you don't have to elaborate if you don't want to, but me personally, I am curious, because every brats for different reasons in different ways. And so actually, no, I am curious, because I know it's in my head, but I am curious from an outside perspective how my style of bratting, what is it you read with me, as far as what am I trying to get from you? What am I, because especially considering we're not in a dynamic, so what is it you see on my end as the goal that I'm trying to, or why I do that with you?
I think that you see in me an opportunity to brat safely. I think that it's something that you really want. I think it's a core of who you are as a person. And I think that interacting with me in that way is a way for you to do it safely, a way that is not going to get you harmed, right? I think you want those types of interactions. I think you want consequences for being naughty. I think that you want the affirmation that, hey, at the end of the day, even though you're teasing me, we're still friends, that I still care about you as a person, right? I think that it's, in a way, it's a comfort thing for you, that you like there to be a certain structure, that you like there to be a certain set of boundaries, that, hey, these are the limits within which I can operate. And if I go outside of those, then things are going to happen that I might like, I might not like, right? Mostly that you do like, I think.
I mean, yeah.
But I think it's a way for you to get out some energy that you might not otherwise be able to express. It's a way to express yourself and feel comfortable doing so, that you are still accepted for who you are, even though you're exhibiting behaviors that are typically seen as unacceptable, right? Or less acceptable. You good?
Damn. Spot fucking on. But the other stuff that you said was don't get me wrong, was definitely like entirely accurate, but like that part specifically, somebody that, you know, whose past actions has inadvertently caused people to leave my life. It's nice to, hey, whether I behave in a way that is appropriate or not, that person's not going to leave, you know? And it's kind of a healthy way for me to do that, where, you know, me doing this could totally make this, you know, might make somebody else dip, but it doesn't. Also, I think being autistic and ADHD, being a brat gives me the structure that my autistic brain needs, while also the like novelty and spontaneousness that my ADHD brain needs. And so there's a little bit of both. Like, I want rules, just so I know how to bend them properly.
Well, and I think too, I'm the type of person who, you know, if you tease me, I'm gonna tease you back. Or if we have negotiated the type of relationship that you and I do, there will be other consequences for that type of behavior, right? If you were to say something or do something that actually hurt my feelings, or actually like legitimately made me angry, my reaction would not be, I'm going to punish you harder. My reaction would be, okay, playtime is over for now, and we're going to sit down and talk about this. And this has happened before. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's definitely happened. I learned that there's one phrase I am not allowed to say because it will actively upset you instead of being playful.
Absolutely. And that's a conversation that I've had to have with several people, is this particular phrase is very triggering for me, and it's not something that I enjoy, and this is not a playful thing to say to me, right? That this is something that, nope, this is the, you know, we're calling red at this point, that this is where playtime stops, that if this happens, you know, I'm not going to be in a headspace to continue playing. I'm not going to be in a teasing headspace. I'm going to be legitimately angry, and I don't want that. And that's not conducive to any type of good scene or any type of good interaction. That's just, I'm angry and I need to go and deal with that. So.
And I think that also lends its way to being, you know, a handler as well. Because I feel like, one, handlers sometimes get bit. And, you know, that is, and I feel like in an instance like that, that's kind of where that happens, to where, you know, that nature has come out in a way that ended up hurting you. Now, unlike animals, you know, we can have that conversation so that doesn't happen again. But, you know, even handlers go back and, you know, they might have some sort of like thing with that animal to be like, hey, okay, like that's not, you know, like, okay, you know, we're, you know, you're done being, you know, handled, I guess, or, you know, being out, like it's time to go like back in your like enclosure or something. Like we're done.
So let's just be clear here. You're calling me a Brat Handler. Does that mean that you want me to break you?
No. Handlers don't break. They handle.
Sorry, a tamer.
With
Tamer.
care. we are delicate flowers, and we must be handled with care. But no. And I think, like I said, you definitely brought out more the handler energy, more than previous people who were Brat Tamers and had a completely different energy, where their goal is to, like, I remember someone wanted to have a rule on me where I wasn't allowed to cuss when I was around them, and I was just like, and you know me.
That's a losing battle just on the face of it.
It really is. Like, I curse like a sailor. Like, it's bad. Like, y'all don't really hear it on this podcast, and it's not that I'm trying not to, just like in this type of interaction, it's not something where like that happens a lot, but like just hanging out, you know, like, you know, and you know, we're not, you know, talking about, you know, a topic or trying to have a discussion. I cuss like every few words. And so I was just like, I was like, why? And they were, you know, they were talking about, well, submissive behavior is a reflection on like the dominant. And part of me is like, no, I get that. But if we're not in that type of situation, if we're, you know, we're just hanging out with like us and friends, like I don't see why that's a thing. I could see in certain scenarios, you know, or even like cursing at you or something. But I was just like, it's just me and you and a bunch of friends, I'm not monitoring my behavior like that. And honestly, considering, and I hate to say that cursing is part of my, like, who I am or part of my behavior, but it very much is. It, like, I think someone told me one time I had cursed, like, 3 times in one sentence, and I was like, I did? I couldn't even remember what I had said. It was just how I talk. And so that is where I think, you know, when we talk about it, and you were talking about, you know, harming someone, I was like, that was trying to change something that is very much a core part of my personality. Like, everybody knows you're going to get around Zoe and you're going to hear probably all the cuss words in the book. Like, that's just what you would accept as part of having me in your life. You're going to have someone that cusses up a storm. And, like, shit, all of your guys' names for D&D have a cuss word in it.
That's true.
Every single one of them. Your nicknames in D&D. Even though your characters have names, I don't use them. Like, I don't think I know what yours is. Is it Finley?
Yeah.
Is that yours? Okay.
Yep.
Honestly, I had to think of the character sheets that I have, in all honesty.
Not gonna lie, I had to think for a minute too.
I mean, at the table, I just call you fuckhead. Like, that's how I tell you, hey, fuckhead, your turn's up. Like,
You
but
sure do.
and so, you know, there's that distinct difference between trying to change something about like my personality, and then someone who's like, that's your personality, and I'm just gonna work with it, work around it. Shit, at times encourage it. A previous host of mine, or I'm gonna say something about, because we had this topic with my 2 previous hosts. One of them was, you know, I talked about that their dominant will get sad if they stop bratting. They'll be like, is everything okay? Like, what happened? Like, I think if you and I had like several interactions where like I just didn't, I think you would think something was wrong.
Yeah, I would absolutely notice that change in behavior and would go, what is everything all right? Like, are you good? Like, we're not interacting the same way that we have in the past. I mean, same thing would happen with my 2 partners. If they, stopped bratting at me for an extended period of time, like, even if I didn't necessarily notice it consciously, I would absolutely notice it subconsciously and would go, hey, what's going on with this person? Are they doing all right?
We actually just talked about that on your end about us when we were at the music festival, and interaction was not the same as it normally would have been. So I was just like, did something happen? Is something wrong?
Right. Yup.
And then my other co-host, they use the term brapter because someone who unfortunately we now know is not a good human being that was on TikTok. He used the term clever girl from Jurassic Park.
Uh-huh.
And basically we're like, a handler is like Chris Pratt.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't,
Right.
He knew very well if he turned his back at the wrong fucking moment,
Oh yeah.
they were gonna eat him.
Yep.
He's sitting there, got all three of them, and he's like, hey, you over there, I fucking see you, like, back the fuck up.
Uh-huh.
And, he knew very well what they were capable of. And, as much as, like, he trained them and talked to them, he still understood these are fucking raptors, and I will get eaten. And I think that is very much, and I love the term that they came up with, because when it comes to someone, with my brattiness, I'm looking for a Chris Pratt. I want someone to, there are rules and there's training and thing, but at the end of the fucking day, like,
You're still allowed to be a raptor. You're still allowed to exhibit who you are. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think we had a great class today, and unfortunately, there's the bell. So that means our class is done for the day. But I hope you got something out of this. And as always, if you have any comments, questions, make sure to leave them down below. And check out all of the socials. And as always, I am your Professor Wicked Witch.
And Professor Cage.
Thanks for coming. Did you enjoy our class? Well, make sure you don't miss the next one. Check the show notes to find all of the different podcatchers we're on, including YouTube Music, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts. Also, make sure to go follow us on TikTok and Twitter at Brat University. Last, make sure you click the link down below to come talk to us on Discord. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks.